Welcome to our posts. Today we will see stories of r/malicious compliance. Teacher wouldn't listen, so the entire class complied and he got fired. This happened in the early 2000s in my junior year of high school. The district had just built the third high school in our city and most of the teachers were new. The band director was one of those new hires. He was qualified for the job, but had zero people skills and was extremely abrasive towards students. He had previously taught university, and could not wrap his head around the fact that high school students are not college-level music majors who live in practice rooms and write symphonies in their sleep. His normal behavior consisted of berating students for not knowing university-level curriculum, talking down to everyone about how he can't understand why they were so incompetent, and stopping rehearsals to go on long tangents about things that had nothing to do with music. Every day at least 2 to 3 students would leave class in tears. We complained to the higher-ups and they repeatedly brushed us off. He made students hate attending his music classes, and many dropped band and orchestra as a result. One of the classes he taught was supposed to be Intro to Music Theory. For those who don't know music, this would be a class that should typically teach things like different types of chords, the definition of music symbols, the logic behind key changes, etc. At the first class of the year there were about 25 kids enrolled. Most of these were music and drama kids who wanted to be teachers or performers in the arts one day. On the first day he handed us a quiz because he wanted to see how much we knew. I think there were maybe 3 to 5 kids who were able to attempt a single question on the quiz. No one got a single answer right. That's how advanced it was. Imagine signing up for what you think is a basic pre-algebra class and walking into advanced calculus. This teacher spent the entire class period berating us for not being prepared when no one could even attempt his quiz. We told him, "This is an intro class, none of us have learned anything like this before," and his response was, "Really? I thought this was an advanced class." The next class period there were maybe 15 kids enrolled. He did the same thing, asked us to perform something we can't even understand, and then berated us for not being prepared. At every class he would say, "I thought you all were musicians, this is supposed to be an advanced class." By the end of the second week, there were 6 students left enrolled in this class, including myself. He softened up slightly to those of us who stayed, and seemed to think we were his prize students and that this was his class of elites, think Professor Slughorn from Harry Potter. In truth, we all thought he was insane and cruel, but the 6 of us had sufficient music background and experience to understand a fraction of his lessons. Without the bell curve we all would have failed his class. A few months go by and we are at the end of the first semester. By now, every student connected to music in the school hated this guy, and repeated complaints had done nothing to fix the problem. The admins filed away every complaint, but never did anything more than remind him that he's supposed to be more kind to students. He changes nothing, and still berates students and makes them cry. So when it comes to the final exam for his theory class, he decides that he wants to give it to us early, so that on the day the final is supposed to be scheduled, we can have a class party instead. Of the 6 of us left, 4 of us have the same period after his class together as well. That class was AP English, and we were prepping for the AP test. We had no problem with a class party in music right before the AP prep exam, so we didn't complain. The day comes of our music final exam and after we finish the test he tells us that for our class party, he wants to take us all to breakfast at a new IHOP that opened 20 minutes away. His class was first period. We try to tell him all the issues with this plan. We aren't allowed to leave campus without permission slips. It was a closed campus policy due to an incident where a student who left campus for lunch got hit by a car and was killed. We will not get back in time for second period, which is a final exam. He doesn't have permission to remove us from the campus. What if there is an emergency and we are unaccounted for because we aren't even at the school? His solution was to tell us that after the start of class on our final class day, he would be going to IHOP, and if we wanted to join him, that was our choice, but if we didn't we would have to stay in the classroom and not bring attention to the next that there was no class and no teacher. Without talking about it to each other, the 6 of us saw an opportunity to finally get the admin's attention to the complete disregard this teacher had for rules and policies. We made sure to inform our English teacher that we might be late to class on the day of the final, due to a class field trip for music theory. She was irritated and reminded us that this final was very important and that she would not give us extra time if we came in late. We told her that we understood, and gave her details about where we would be and what we would be doing and who we would be with. She said she still expected us to be in her class. On the day of the final, we all went to IHOP. It took forever to get there because of construction, and forever to get our food because the restaurant was newly opened and had a large number of customers. We got back to the school halfway through our second period class. The admins were waiting for us. Security was waiting for us. My English teacher had called the front office to complain that 4 of her best students were missing and that she was fairly certain we weren't even on campus. The admins had checked attendance and seen that we were all marked present that morning, and they had searched the entire school looking for our class. The 4 of us walked into our English final to a livid teacher. We knew she was pissed at us, but couldn't punish us beyond saying we had the same remaining time as the rest of the class, since we had been with a teacher in our absence. None of us did as well in the final as we could have if we had the full 87 minutes, but we were doing well enough in the class already that the lesser marks didn't affect our overall grade too much. The band teacher had a private reprimand that was so loud the entire school could hear it. He was confused as to why the administration was upset that he took minor children off campus without permission or notice, without proper school transportation, or even a good reason. He stayed with his usual attitude, but this time towards the admins. Why are you guys so incompetent about this? They are old enough to drive, what's the problem? The English teacher, who I actually adore, and was one of the best teachers I've ever had, absolutely went mama bear on the administration about how they could continue to employ someone who disrespects the other teachers so much as to deprive his students of their final exams and put them in potentially dangerous circumstances. He told us to drive ourselves to the restaurant, and any accidents or medical issues would have been the school's fault. He was fired later that day. Many of the students had a gleeful but confused reaction, since the 6 of us weren't talking to anyone about it. All most people knew was that this tyrant of a teacher was gone. We didn't spread the story very much of how it happened because we still feared being reprimanded for our involvement, since he technically have us a choice to go with him or stay, but I always smiled when people gossiped about what the final straw was that got him fired. TLDR, jerk teacher told us to leave school with him for class party, we complied and the district fired him. Next story. Pretend the lot is full. Many decades ago, when I was a student enrolled in driving school, the instructor told me to pretend the lot is full and park the car. It was very early in the morning, so the shopping mall lot where we were practicing parking was empty. I knew that the pretend it's full part was meant to emphasize the importance of driving slowly and cautiously and centering the car between the lines, but my teenage brain couldn't resist the obvious opportunity for MC. I slowly drove up and down the lanes and around that lot for at least 5 minutes before the instructor finally got flustered and barked, "What are you waiting for? Park the car. You told me to pretend the lot is full." I give the instructor full props for accepting the MC humor of the moment as I watched him shake his head while his expression morphed from anger through realization and into a smiling instruction to, just park the car. Next story. Acknowledge Jesus' presence over all of us. Sure, I'll mention him. Was at a housewarming party at my wife's sister this past weekend. My in-laws' boomer/far-right leaning friends were there preaching and proselytizing as usual, to everyone's dismay. My band provided live music. More of an impromptu jam session as opposed to a rehearsed set. Boomer dude, Kip, grabs the mic from my mic stand, any other time/place/setting, and my foot is on his chest, and proceeds to pray over everyone right as we were about to start the first song. After his prayer, he points his index finger at me assertively, and then rather loudly instructs me to acknowledge Jesus' presence over us. Right. Why would I not comply? On drums, give it up for Jesus, Jesse Ramirez. Emphasizing the Jesus pronunciation. Kip lunges forward, to grab the mic again, but Jesse counts off the song, Billy Joel's, "You May Be Right," prompting Kip to back off, stunned. Kip's wife escorts him out while he's screaming and shaking his fist at me repeatedly. Didn't see Kip and his wife the rest of the evening, didn't ask about them, so presumably, they just left. Next story. You want a large pizza with everything? Okay, you got it. Sweet story from my brother. Yesterday a pizza place my brother worked for got a call for pizza with everything. Did you mean deluxe pizza? I want everything. You have it, I want it on mine. This pizza place was one of the nice one that carries less common topping. So he prepared a pizza with pineapple and almond, normally for Hawaiian pizza, lettuce and tomato, pepperoni, hamburger, sausage, ham, shredded roast beef, shredded turkey, banana pepper, jalapeno pepper, regular pizza cheese mix, cheddar cheese, Swiss cheese, and the coup de grace, anchovies. My brother said it was the most expensive single pizza he's had to make, with $2 per extra topping, almost $50, including tax, pizza that is extra spicy, extra salty, and so thick and messy it'd have to be eaten with a fork and scissor to deal with cheese. Customer never called back about that pizza. Next story. Cut hours. I got you. I work for one of the big auto parts stores. We don't have the catchy jingle. This week the top brass have been crying, cut hours, like their life was on the line. We barely have enough staff to run as it is, but today was a different scenario entirely. I got told to cut more hours. A little insight: managers cannot go to lunch or leave our store without having another manager to take their place. Cue the malicious compliance. I cut the hours of 3 non-management employees, and gave a few hours to someone who has been out of country for family affairs. We had no layover between these hours, but that does not matter. Basically ended up with net 0 hours between cutting and adding. But they wanted me to go farther. I cut my own hours. We were scheduled for 2 managers for about 4.5 hours, just us. I called in the next, non-management, employee 2.5 hours early. I left at 14:30. Managers cannot take a lunch if there is not a relief manager. So, we had me who worked 8 hours, no lunch, a manager who will work for 9.5 hours, no lunch, and a non-management employee who will work 7.5 hours, no lunch. We get a pity stipend for food if we cannot leave the store for a lunch as well. Let's break this down. X3, employees got a 1-hour meal penalty at 1 hour of our regular base pay. X1, employee is working more than 9 hours, beyond 8 is time and 1/2. The company has to pay for their lunch. Let's say $30. X1, employee was called in 2.5 hours earlier than scheduled. So, even though we cut hours, it cost the company far more than keeping one extra person to be a layover. I'm sure I will hear about it when I get back, but I was just following orders, which I have in writing. Next story. Nothing personal, just collecting money for my government. This story was told to me by an ambulance driver, who has given me permission to share it here. For context, in our country, police officers don't have to pay for certain medical scans and are generally treated with high respect at hospitals. Mr. S has been an ambulance driver at our local hospital for over 20 years. Occasionally, he also served as a personal driver for the hospital director. One day, while driving his boss's car on an urgent matter, Mr. S was stopped by a cop he recognized from the hospital. Despite Mr. S's attempt to explain the situation and avoid trouble with his boss, the cop issued him a $40 speeding ticket, saying, "Nothing personal, I'm only collecting money for my government." Later that day, Mr. S was reprimanded by the hospital director for the speeding ticket. However, the director also assured him that he had his back if Mr. S planned any sort of retaliation. A couple of days later, Mr. S was walking through the hospital when he spotted the same cop standing in front of the billing director's office. Curious, he inquired about the cop's business and learned that the cop was trying to register his mother's chest scan under his own name to avoid the bill. Essentially, he was asking for a favor. Mr. S saw an opportunity. He asked the billing manager to hand over the cop's paperwork, offering to register the scan as a favor. Taking the papers, Mr. S registered the scan for the full price of $280. He then returned to the cop and handed him the bill. The cop was shocked and asked what had happened. Mr. S, with a smile, replied, "Nothing personal, I'm only collecting money for my government." Next story. Just answer my simple question. Years back I had a temp job at the reception of a hospital. The concept of the hospital was that external doctors could book rooms for surgery and for their patients after surgery, if they had something bigger to do that they couldn't do in their own medical practice. There was also a sleep laboratory, run by an external practice, where patients stayed overnight for their examination/measurements. For that usually the technician and the patients started coming in at around 7 p.m. and they all left at 6 a.m. Usually anything besides the measurements during sleeping were done in the medical practice, which was in walking distance in the same street. Setting, random day, somewhere way before 7 p.m., where usually nobody is in the sleep laboratory. Nice woman, NW, comes in and asks about the way to the sleep laboratory. I'm pretty sure that she's at the wrong location and I explain that to her. I ask her to take a seat nearby and to give me a moment so I can check with the practice where she needs to go. She thanks me and takes a seat. While I'm still typing the number of the practice, enter awful woman, AW. AW asks the same questions as NW. I try to explain the situation, same as before, but she aggressively interrupts me and slams something along the lines of, "It can't be so hard to answer a simple question, tell me where the sleep laboratory is now," in my face. Cue malicious compliance, I smile and tell her the way, first floor, to the right, and so on. AW walks off. I call the practice and they tell me that, as I expected, nobody is at the hospital that day and that every patient should go to the practice. And that they all should also know that, because it's on their note with the date and time for the appointment. I inform NW and she gets going to the practice, probably still in time for her appointment. AW comes back after around 15 minutes and tells me that nobody is there. I just shrug and go back to my work. Next story. Follow the speed limit? If you say so. Back in my high school days, the school decided that the parking lot speed limit for cars would be 5 miles per hour. In theory, a good thing. Reduces the chance of collisions greatly, and any that happen should be very minor. Now here's the thing. The number of people that followed that is exactly 0. Not the parents, not the teachers, not the students, we are a K-12 school, so it was mostly parents. Now the administration, who has since been going on monthly power trips, didn't like that and decided to start handing out speeding tickets, written warnings that you would lose your parking pass and get an email home. So we, the 30 of 100 high schoolers who had cars, decided to play around with it. Now normally, car line takes about 20 minutes between when we leave, we get out a few minutes early so our cars are out of the way, and when car line is mostly done aside from a few stragglers, and that's with most cars going at about 10 to 15 miles per hour in the giant parking lot we had, which couldn't be used for parents to park. Well, that's too short, we decided. So, we complied in the most malicious way possible. Every high schooler with a car did less than 5 miles per hour through the parking lot. Normally by the time the smaller kids got into their cars, we were gone. But not anymore. We were crawling through the parking lot at idle speed. What normally took 5 minutes to clear 30 cars now took 10. And it had consequences. The entire car line for the other 500 students was not also moving at idle speed. Car lines started taking 30 minutes on a good day. To say parents were livid is an understatement. Complaints filled the Facebook page, and the sassier parents reminded everyone that we just followed rules set by the beloved admin, beloved everywhere but the high school. With only one way out, and us having to get out before parents because we were literally in the way, our change screwed up the entire car line. In fact, it got so bad that the school was told to fix it by the city or there would be consequences, since we started backing up a major road during rush hour. At the start of the next year the habit fell out since most of that 30 people had left and we went back to going a safe but above the speed limit speed in the parking lot. It's been 2 years, not a thing has been said. TLDR, the school wanted us to do a slow speed limit and we were the only ones who got in trouble for it, so we backed up car line for everyone else, making it take much longer and got the school in trouble with the city. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share and subscribe the channel our posts.